Night was descending, blowing sweaty, tangled hair away from her eyes. May snatched the nozzle and twisted it with both arms. She needed boiling water to defend herself from those things when she went back outside. With tears building in her eyes, she remembered the long-ago fresh winter mornings when she would use this water to defrost the bird bath. It felt like another life now. As she drew water into the bucket, the basement bulb popped, making her shriek. In the darkness, sweat rolled off her face. Throaty, screeching caws from outside were all she could hear, mocking her. Perhaps they had sabotaged the generator, too. "Shut up," she grunted through clenched teeth as the noises circled her, barely softened by the basement walls. "Shut up!" But it was no use. She knew they wouldn't stop until she was dead. After all, such birds only fed on decaying matter. A year ago, it had all been so different. May had come to this secluded cabin with little but the clothes on her back to get away from the city. A log fire, forest pine air, thatched roof, and foraged meals were all she thought she had needed. What nature offered was so much cleaner, so much purer than the suffocation of the city. The smoke, the noise, the drama. May hadn't been able to stand it any longer. Without saying a word to her remaining friends and family about where she was going, May had carved out a new life for herself in the secluded hills, with little company but the birds that visited her each morning. May didn't mind, as she felt the birds understood her more than people did. And that was how it had stayed for the longest time, just her and the birds. It hadn't been perfect, however. The longer May remained in the wilderness, the more she became afflicted by bouts of hunger and anxiety. They're meaningless sensations, caused only by my lingering attachment to the old world, May had told herself on one cold and windy night while rocking on her bed with her blanket pulled tightly around her. Let them go. She had tried, and it had eventually worked, although she still sometimes found herself surprised by the sound of her own voice, and one day had even jumped at the sight of her own reflection in one of her steel cooking pans. However, none of this truly mattered when she had the birds for company. The more time she'd committed to cultivating the little community in the front yard, the more she'd been rewarded by their color, beauty, and music. There were regular guests like the common robins and song thrushes, and then there were the sometimes visitors like jays, sparrows, and even woodpeckers. After a few weeks, May had decided that the hunger and loneliness was worth it. For the first time that she could remember, there were no problems in her life. But then they started to arrive. From day one, May had sensed their evil scent before she'd even laid eyes on them. One morning, she'd simply been woken up by it, the lingering smell of death, just outside her front door. She'd opened the door to instantly be attacked by a schism of long black wings and sharp beaks, many of them fighting to get inside her sanctuary. With cuts and claw marks all over her, May had managed to shut them out of her cabin as they kept banging and scraping against the door. May hadn't thought it had been possible for her to hate a bird as much as a person, but her feelings were confirmed for them straight away. At first, May had wondered if, with the help of some tactfully placed poison feed, she could deal with the black horrors if they stayed at their current numbers. But each day, more and more came to land, scaring away her usual friends, and they stank like rotting meat, unnaturally waking her from restless dreams every morning. She couldn't find them in any textbook. Tar black feathers, far larger than crows, ruby red beaks, and glowing orange eyes. They traveled in packs and made a relentless scraping call, and they were always hungry. Once she ran out to shoo them off, but they had remained in place, their glowing eyes staring back at her. Caw, caw. Their beaks could tear through feeders, even expensive ones. And her regular visitors? These horrid birds hadn't been so keen on them. May still remembered emerging from a bad night's sleep to shake out food for her little buddies, only to see a bloody heap of them piled up beneath a departing curtain of flapping black wings. At this point, May had been left with no choice but to call upon the services of the old world for help. Pest control. Of course, it had taken them a while to find May's secluded little cabin, and when the two slack-jawed idiots did arrive to inspect, the winged demons had chosen to be nowhere in sight. "It sounds to me like they might be corvids," the first inspector had said while scratching his backside. "Red-beaked birds that feed on decaying matter and carry disease? Might explain the dead ones." "But it's not the disease that's killing my friends," May had tried to explain. "They're killing them." "Sometimes seagulls come on into the mainland," the other inspector had inserted. "And they can be quite aggressive." "But they're not seagulls, are they?" May had almost screamed at them both. "So what are they?" The inspectors had left without being able to answer, and when it became clear that she could offer them little money in exchange for their services, had not shown much interest in helping further. With their lack of answers, May had invented a new name for the awful creatures: Deathwings. It seemed fitting. From that day, May made it her mission to rid herself of the Deathwings herself, putting every other survival priority on hold until she succeeded. No more sleeping, no more washing, no more eating. This cabin, this corner of the world she'd carved out for herself, was the only thing in her entire life that was truly hers, and she was not about to let the Deathwings take it. She would do whatever it took. Now she was stamping up the cellar stairs, barely noticing the sloshing water which scalded her hands. "I'll have done with you," she panted as she hauled the burning metal bucket through the darkened house towards the front door. "I'll have done with you all." Outside the cabin, shifting patterns of red and black smothered the gaps in the log-built walls, and beaks tapped relentlessly on the wood. Tap, tap, tap. Of course, the cawing remained, but it had now grown to a fever pitch of white noise, matched only by the raging fury in her head. Charging at her front door, May stumbled out, with a burning bucket at the ready, but a black whirlwind erupted around her, making her drop it. She threw her hands to her face, and in the twilight sky, she peered through her fingers to see that the descending dark cloud was not the coming of nightfall, but something far worse. The end.